A year ago, I said I'd probably never recommend another Bambu Lab printer again. But you know what? I still use my P1S. I blocked the printer from connecting to the internet, I locked it in developer mode, and I only use OrcaSlicer instead of Bambu's software. I had to do all that to keep it under my control instead of Bambu's. But I'm weird. I acknowledge that. I am one of the nuts who likes to own something after they buy it and not have the company watch everything I do with their product. And Bambu Lab could have just left the status quo at that, and I wouldn't be making this video. But they didn't. I think this comment on my video last year sums up the current situation perfectly. So here's what happened. OrcaSlicer is a fork of the open source project Bambu Studio, which is a fork of Prusa Slicer, which is a fork of Slicer. And OrcaSlicer already has to dance around Bambu's weird default setup where every file you print has to go through Bambu's own servers, meaning they can see everything you ever print on your printer. That is, unless you're like me and you run it in developer mode and lock it off the internet. Anyway, some people are okay with using OrcaSlicer and printing through Bambu's cloud. I mean, I get it. It's convenient if you're like on the road and you want to shoot off a print job to your printer at home and you don't have your own private VPN. I don't want to do that, but if you do, more power to you. Except Bambu is like, you know what? No. For the like 0.1% of power users who want to use an open source fork of our slicer to do something that gives us more control over your printer, no. You have to use our setup and only our setup. So they threatened a developer of an OrcaSlicer fork with legal action for things that developer didn't do using their own open source code to do what they say he did. Bambu is abusing the open source social contract and using their legal might to suppress probably the tiniest little population of their users for who knows what reason. It seems dumb to me because the easier thing to do would be just to not do anything at all. But instead they wrote a blog post blaming an individual open source developer for their own infrastructure and security problems. I really don't think they understand open source culture and probably not security either. Instead of finding solutions to community issues and security bugs, Bambu seems to enjoy writing blog posts to put people who oppose them on blast. Around the time this stuff flared up last year, they had a similar blog post blaming community backlash on unfortunate misinformation. I can only imagine they meant videos from people who paid for their printers and didn't expect the whole software ecosystem to be turned upside down after they bought their printer. People like me. Today they're blaming one developer of a tiny slicer fork for potentially impacting their entire cloud infrastructure. I love how they frame this as a developer trying to impersonate their app when he is literally using the same open source code their Linux app uses. Then they spend hundreds of words talking about vulnerabilities, bugs, and instabilities as if that has anything to do with this current situation. Maybe they could take a new approach and just not lock down their whole ecosystem in the first place. But who am I kidding? Nothing I say here, and no amount of complaining in the comments below is gonna change Bambu's behavior. But spending a little more for a printer from another company just might. Louis Rossmann posted a video saying he'd pledged 10 grand to help the open source developer fight Bambu's legal threats. And I'd happily chip in too, but that's only useful if the dev wants to put himself right back in Bambu's crosshairs. The better play might just be to skip Bambu altogether. Until next time, I'm Jeff Geerling.